Okay, good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting of Administration and Public Works Committee, Monday, November 28th, 5 o'clock. Let's see, Councilmember Harris. Councilmember Newsma.
Here.
Councilmember Reed.
Here.
Councilmember Burns. Okay. Okay, we have a quorum. So is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I move approval of the minutes.
I will second approval of the minutes from November 14th.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Okay, minutes are approved. We'll now move to public comment.
Mr. Vasilko's online.
Okay, Mr. Vasilko? Mr. Vasilko? Okay, then we'll move to, I think we have public comment in person, residents? Sorry.
From
Hi.
the right order here. But I'm speaking on behalf of,
Can you move the microphone? But there you go.
I'm speaking on behalf of.
Is there any audio at all, do we know?
Hey, Andrew.
Hello,
I can hear you now.
Oh, it's the audio must not have been working on our end, and maybe is. Now it is. That's what it was. Okay, but now we'll start with people in person.
okay, we'll start with, go ahead, and then we'll move to the online.
Recording in progress.
So I wanted to make a comment on behalf of, I believe it is one of the last ordinance of banning trucks on Dewey. So we've been dealing, my wife and I, we've lived here for about 3 years at this point. Since moving in, we've had to contact you all quite a bit, and our wonderful alderman a lot, for having our driveways blocked, for having semis parked in front and blocking several driveways, hitting cars, idling in the middle of the night that shakes all of our houses. They're quite large semis. During their high periods of traffic, they use our streets to actually load and unload their own vehicles. And there's pictures, I think, in the log of their loading racks just standing in the middle of the street. We're by 2 schools and 2 parks. So we have children coming by all the time. We're the only street that is prohibited from having, or maybe not prohibited, but because of the trucks and the traffic, we cannot have speed bumps or roundabouts. We're the only street in our area that does not have roundabouts or speed bumps, and we have cars that use our street for through traffic to get around the Oakton and California, which I don't know what it turns into in the suburbs, but that entire congested area, they'll use our area for through traffic. So not only do we have speeding cars, but we also have semis that are constantly going up and down. It has caused a lot of issues in order to get trucks moved. We've had to contact them, contact you all, have police come out, have parking enforcement come out. We've tried to work with them. I know that they've made some improvements, but I'm not confident that those improvements are going to last, considering over 3 years they chose not to make any improvements up until the last couple months. So I think we have a couple people as well, along with my wife, that would like to talk as well. I have an entire photo library of images, but yeah, it's a big nuisance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Denise Young. I also live in the 8th Ward, and Devon is our alderman. As Rebecca mentioned, my wife, unfortunately, we've been having issues with Cleasons, and she touched on some of those points. I think specifically for myself, the biggest issue is the 18-wheelers causing the majority of the issues. So we're not sure if they work or if they are employed by Cleasons or how that works, but they will consistently over summer months, which is their busy season, will block our driveways, as you mentioned, idle, and numerous times in the night, and sometimes it wakes us up. So this is outside of what their posted working hours are, so we were kind of surprised that this was happening. So very concerning. Some of the residents have approached the trucks, asking them not to idle for longer than 10 minutes. I forget what the restriction is, because it can go on for long periods of time. And obviously there's numerous issues with that, besides it being loud, additional pollution and whatnot. So my specific issue, and I think many other people's issues, are with the larger trucks, the 18-wheelers, causing lots of issues. So I support any kind of potential ban on those if we can, but like Rebecca mentioned, we'd like to move forward with Cleasons and come to some kind of amicable solution. So we don't want, I don't want them to necessarily go out of business or anything like that. But yeah, I'd like to see some improvements with them going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in person? Okay, then we'll move to public comment online. Mr. Vasilko?
Hi. So a couple of things on the bills list. There is a Cook County grant agreement payment for $50,000 that I do not understand why they're giving us a grant for the animal shelter. Why are we paying them $50,000? There's another payment to Halliburton Root for $22,000. I know that's coming out of a 2021 GEO bond, but once again, I didn't realize this project, I thought this project was going to be debated further. So I have a question why we need to pay that. Would be helpful if someone on staff could summarize in one document the animal shelter funding, because it's scattered everywhere, different GEO bonds. It's just hard to put it all together as one number. I also want to say that I don't think it's part of your agenda, but the pensions should be fully funded. I want to say that again, and it doesn't have to be by taxes. I understand there's north of $40 million of surpluses that are available for that. And lastly, item A3, I don't know if Councilmember Nuisma is on the agenda or on the dais tonight, but this is for a truck that is, again, a gas burning truck. I understand staff's not happy with maybe the quality of the current status of electric trucks, but I would suggest that we wait a year and continue to maintain the existing truck and hope that there would be something much more promising as an electric vehicle. Otherwise, this is going to be in your fleet for another 20, 25 years. So I'd ask that you postpone item A3. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nobody else signed up. I don't know.
Okay. I think we do have another resident online for public comment.
Yes, sir.
Yes, please. This is to do with Cleason again. I just want to add in that the school buses that we have outside our house, we have school buses that come in. We also have disability buses that go down the other street. And quite often, because of those 18-wheelers, those school buses aren't allowed to go, can't actually fit past our houses on either road. So we just wanted to add in that is an issue. Cleason, whenever we've had issues with them, asking them to move their trucks out of the way, we've had a lot of pushback from them. So I just wanted to add that is a concern, because that is not, this is a residential zone and our daughter needs to go to school. And we've got other families who can't get bus services too. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who'd like to comment? Okay, I think that's it. Great. Okay, so we'll now move to the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I move the consent agenda, which includes items A1 through A3.
Second.
Okay, and so all in favor?
Aye.
No objections? All right, the consent agenda has been moved. We now move to item A4. Would someone like to move?
Madam Chair, I'll move item A4, which is Resolution 119R22, authorizing city staff to issue a memorandum to the Evanston Police Department with a notification regarding incoming delivery trucks to Evanston Lumber.
Second.
We discussed this kind of in depth last week. I don't know if we need to repeat that discussion, but just to kind of recap, what we're proposing here is admittedly not a great solution, but it is better than every other alternative. The objections to trucks going down Oakton, every single objection applies to trucks going down Main Street as well. And we're doing this to not to support a business, but to prevent Evanston residents and Evanston drivers from getting into some accident involving property damage or potentially something even more serious. So I would urge my colleagues to support this. I'll also point out that we are not changing an ordinance. In fact, what we're proposing here is merely a memorandum to the police department, which would officially inform them of what's going on so that they would not write tickets to trucks going down Oakton. The trucks inbound to Evanston Lumber are already allowed by current ordinance to go down Oakton. We're not voting on whether or not that's allowed. They are allowed by current ordinance because of the hazard that exists at the Main Street and Custer Street intersection. So one could argue that what we're doing here by preventing trucks from being pulled over on Oakton is actually a step in to ensure safety on Oakton. I'll leave it at that, hopefully with a positive vote from this committee.
Councilmember Reed?
Yeah, I'll vote to, I guess, move this forward to council, and we can discuss this, or not discuss it further, hopefully. But I'm not supportive of this. I know residents of my ward don't want to see this. I think it is legal already, and I think we don't need to issue a resolution to tell the police department to do what they should already do, and our police chief can just issue a memo, and we can avoid the spectacle.
Indeed, we may not even need to have this spectacle. This was the direction that Councilmember Hedekadis and Mayor Biss and I kind of agreed on, to at least put it to a vote to allow concerns to be heard.
Any other discussion? Yeah, I guess I want to hear more of the discussion, I guess, at council on it. I have, obviously, as a former teacher, I have concerns about the schools and the trucks, but I also, I saw the presentation you made, so I see the situation there too. I wish there was some alternative so we didn't have to have trucks going down a street with schools. But anyway, so.
I'll just say there is an alternative. It's to spend $4 million to move the embankment, which is not a realistic alternative. That's about, yeah.
All right, should we go ahead and vote? Okay, Councilmember Harris? Aye. Councilmember Newsma?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
And aye. Okay, so that passes 4-0 to council. Next up, item number A5.
Yeah, I'll move item A5, ordinance 108-022, amending City Code Section 10-11-13, Schedule 13. Second. Okay, so as folks have heard from residents of the 8th Ward, there is an issue. Do we have, does the memo have an image in it that we can pull up from staff? So I think most of you have maybe seen the image of Cleston. I know I've just discussed this with Councilmember Nusma previously. It's a greenhouse wholesaler that's located in the middle of a residential neighborhood, and it's been there since the 1940s. But the business, particularly in the last few years, has grown. And in fact, I have a comment from a resident who couldn't be here, Kim Davis, who said that they've lived in the neighborhood for almost 30 years, and for the first 15 years or so, there's never a truck issue. And so some people have said, well, you purchased a house next to the greenhouse, and you should have expected this. Or, you know, this is akin to purchasing a house near a stadium or near a fire station or a park and then complaining about the noise. Well, no, this business has grown recently, and you know, we're happy about it. And so they said for the first 15 years, there was never a truck, and there were no semis. And since they have grown, now they're blocking, as folks have said, their streets, their driveways, school buses, general decrease in visibility. And I've been getting emails since the beginning of the term regarding this. And, you know, I've worked with staff, worked very close with Mike Rivera on this. The police department recently went out after 2 summers of continuously getting emails and staff reaching out and seeing that there was no solution. I even began speaking with some of my colleagues here in this committee, and in fact I spoke with Councilmember Burns, who's just joined us, and he realized that he knew some folks who worked there and reached out, and they were unwilling to discuss any further. Cleston isn't, you know, feels that they've done the best that they can do. And so I wonder if it's time for, you know, them to expand elsewhere, to figure out a way to rework their business to make it fit within a residential neighborhood. And, you know, by disallowing vehicles that are over 8,000 pounds on this road, it gives us a tool to ensure that certainly that they're not idling, and, you know, maybe that they're switching their model and using smaller vehicles for transport from this residential neighborhood to potentially another staging area. Thank you. So I guess what I'm requesting is that, you know, I'd like to have this, it's not on the council agenda tonight, I don't believe, but I'd like to have this move forward to council and hold it at council. And I think we can, you know, maybe try to continue to have conversations with Cleston as we approach the summer months, and you know, bring it back to council then.
Councilmember Burns?
Councilmember Reed and I did discuss this yesterday, and so I see it a little differently. I don't think this is ready to move on to council. I did reach out to one of the Cleasons, one of the sons, and asked him if he could try once again to, especially with Councilman Reed being new to office, if he could try to set up a meeting between Councilman Reed and his father. I think such a meeting with the previous administration has occurred, maybe even early on in this term. I'm not sure Councilman Reed was present for that meeting, but I believe meetings have taken place. There was some recommendations that were, I think, agreed on by both sides. And I think really the issue is around enforcement of what was already agreed on. And potentially, as I've explained to Councilman Reed, we may disagree on this, but potentially even steeper fines if what is agreed on is not complied with, because we have existing code that I think can address this. We might need some a new ordinance potentially. Again, I talked to Councilman Reed about this, potentially saying that there's no idling or parking between 4:30 a.m. or whatever time we came up with, but basically to make sure that there's no parking and idling before the business is open. These commercial vehicles shouldn't be blocking driveways in the first place, whether it's in this area or anywhere else. If that's not in our code, it should be. And if we look at our records and it shows that when police officers are responding that they're not writing tickets, they should be. And so I'm working on a noise ordinance where one of the issues we've run into is that it doesn't say in our code what the fine amount should be, but also how many warnings should be given before the the fine is given. And I think with this, we can say, look, one warning after one warning, a ticket, shall be given on the delivery driver. And I think after that, they'll get the message. If the fine is not enough, I would support increasing it potentially. But I think this is more of not. I don't think we should prohibit vehicles from commercial vehicles from being able to make a delivery to a business that has been there for a while and a use that's been there, I think, since the 40s. But I do think we should look at the compliance of our current code as it relates to this issue, and look at potentially steeper fines and other enforcement mechanisms, and to just figure out how we can get them back at the table. I do think that's important. We need to engage them and get them at the table.
Thank you. Councilmember Newsma?
I'll concur with Councilmember Burns and also add another concept, maybe not specifically for this, but not just specifically for this instance, but also for the Evanston Lumber instance. And I've got another business, the Mies Meals, across the street from the police station, has similar issues with trucks causing disturbances in the neighborhood. In talking about these issues with one of my constituents, the suggestion was made that we need to get a consultant in to do a kind of freight logistics transportation plan and take a holistic look at this problem. So it's not just this business here, as they come up, but zoom out, take a holistic look, and maybe there's something we can come up with that will work not only for these businesses but for other businesses as well, in terms of having a staging area somewhere outside, outside of Evanston, or in a non-residential neighborhood where trucks could hang out until their designated time, and at least eliminate the idling on the street problem. So it's an amorphous proposal at this point. I'm not suggesting we defer action or inaction on item A5 tonight, but just something I want to put on the table for potential consideration moving forward. That would be in compliance, or it would be it would be in the spirit of our CARP commitments as well.
Councilmember Harris?
I do think the main goal is to get people in compliance, as Councilmember Burns has stated, and make sure that they're doing the right thing. And I think we have to try that, one more time, and then if not, deal with the repercussions of that.
Thank you. I also agree. I think we do need to, it's clearly a serious problem that should be addressed right away. I wouldn't want to wait for a consultant. I think there are measures that should be taken immediately with seriously, increased fines and working on enforcement. But I don't think there should be any delay. This sounds like I wouldn't want to live in that situation either, with idling trucks and showing up outside of hours. And yeah, it doesn't sound pleasant at all. So I think something has to happen right away on this. So I don't know, Councilmember Reed, at this point, go ahead.
Yes, I just want to, again, Councilmember Burns, I appreciate it. I think you missed the public comment and you missed, some of the discussion ahead of time. But you're, fully aware of the situation. We've had a lot of conversations about this. I just, I want to remind us that we've had staff reaching out for years. And you mentioned, again, that it's been there since 1941, and, that's been the use. I think you missed where I read a comment from one of the residents who said that they've lived here for 30 years. And it's only in the last 15 years that the business has grown to the level where they've had semis coming into the neighborhood. This was not a neighborhood that had semis coming in 1941. There weren't semis around. And so this is a very different situation than what folks have been used to in this neighborhood. And so we need to, and as you stated, we reached out. Because you mentioned we need to reach out one more time. Had Councilmember Burns reach out to a close or a friend of his who is in the family, and they did not want to talk to us anymore. They're done with this, and it seems as though they may have outgrown this neighborhood. And if we can't figure something out soon, and again, I'm looking to not, this isn't on the council agenda tonight. I'm looking to move it out of this committee. And then we can have further conversation, and maybe that will be the thing that brings them to the table, right? When they know that this is something serious that can happen. And so that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for us to to give us that. And I think we need to use, staff has reached out quite a bit. And yes, there's an agreement that was made with the police department and the fire department. And after that, residents reached out to me and emailed me and said it's still happening. And so something has to be done, and they have to understand that, you know, there is the potential that they've outgrown this residential neighborhood where they're bringing semis. I can't imagine any situation where anybody would want in their single-family home residential neighborhood a bunch of semis sitting out, whether it's just coming in and out for the regular business or, you know, sitting out there as early as 4:30 in the morning with their refrigerators humming and their engines roaring and exhaust coming out. I'd be terrified for us to even look at if there are increased rates of asthma in that neighborhood. I don't know. You know, so I'd encourage this committee to vote this forward, and then, you know, I plan to reach out to Cleaston after this and try to have conversations. And, you know, we've worked together on a lot of policy. We can tweak this. You know, Councilmember Burns and I talked about maybe it's a prohibition from a certain time at night, from maybe, you know, 9 o'clock at night until 7 o'clock in the morning when the business opens. Maybe that's the middle ground, but I think we can have those discussions between now and the summer, when I would like to have this actually come back, if it needs to, onto a council agenda. And so I urge a yes vote. I'm urging that we vote this out of this committee and then we delay it at council until the summer.
Can we delay it here?
I'd like this committee to show that we are serious about protecting the neighbors in the neighborhood and to vote it out of this committee. And then, you know, we can, I think we've tried to bring Cleston back to the table. It has not worked.
Who's tried?
Myself, Councilmember Burns, staff.
Councilmember Harris?
So we've tried to bring them to the table in parking, and they are not complying, and we're okay with that?
Hi, good evening, members of the committee. Mike Rivera, Administrative Services Interim Director. Yeah, in the past, we have reached out to some of the managers there at the Cleston company to try to work with them. There are signs currently posted on the east side of, I believe it's Dewey, just in front of the establishment that says no vehicles idling. Those idling vehicles would be enforced by the Evanston Police Department. Evanston Police Department has been deployed to that area many times, but you know, if they receive a call and they have other emergencies, then that wouldn't be a pressing item, so they wouldn't respond expeditiously. And then parking services has been out there, and we have written several tickets for vehicles that have been parked while unattended, and if we ran across vehicles that are staged with a driver, we've asked them to move on, and sometimes they've done that, and other times we've had to call the police to the scene because the driver is not cooperative.
Councilmember Harris?
So when they are uncooperative, we bill the truck? We find the truck, or we find the company?
Well, most of the vehicles are not owned by the company. They're third-party carriers that are either picking up or dropping off goods.
Okay.
Councilmember Burns?
I would be interested at the next meeting, whether this is passed on or not, to just know if fines have actually been issued, because if we want the business to continue to operate, I think we have to allow them for commercial vehicles and trucks to be able to access it. If there's a potential for these businesses, I don't think that these trucks are owned by the company itself. And so I would imagine that they have very little to do with determining whether or not it's a van that delivers it, if it could even fit, the cargo, or if it's a larger truck that does it. I agree with Councilmember Newsma. I think moving forward, if there's a way, I'm all for trying to minimize the amount of semi-trucks that are on the road, not just in this area, but there are semi-trucks that are in residential areas all the time. Emerson is a truck route. There's trucks that go down there all the time, right? And that's all residential, all the way from the Evanston border all the way to downtown. To close to Ridge Street. That's all residential on both sides. It's not something that is ideal, but it happens. In our city currently, we allow these trucks to operate in our city. If we want to change that, that's a different question. So again, I'm supportive of taking a longer look at what do we need to do to minimize the amount of trucks that need to deliver to businesses. I don't think we should do that in this piecemeal manner. But I'm also curious to know, again, how many fines have actually been, how many truck drivers have been fined in this area, what those fines are, if we can increase them. I think there's ways to encourage better behavior. And I'd also like to continue to try to reach out. If you think moving this on to council is going to send that message, I'm happy to support it. I don't necessarily think that in and of itself will do it. I just think we need to make another attempt to reach out. I reached out. Councilman Reed, have you reached out personally? Have you sent an email or called them personally? Okay, so I've reached out, but I'm not the council member. So I would like Councilman Reed to reach out. I would like potentially our city manager to reach out. And if we can't get anywhere then we can move in a different direction potentially. But I think there's still some work to do here.
Sure, and just for the record, I have reached out. I left messages for Tom Klesson there at the site. I haven't had any calls returned to myself. I'm happy to coordinate the tickets issued by parking enforcement as well as any moving violations or anything like that that EPD might have written on the scene. And to Councilmember Reed's point, this is where the business needs to get engaged. The city of Evanston routinely orders items. We ask what type of truck they're going to come on. Sometimes when we have require a special delivery with a forklift or a certain size vehicle, we'll request certain size vehicles with a forklift if that's what we need. So that's where the businesses need to manage how their deliveries are coming to them, because my understanding is that they're just putting in their orders and they have no control what size vehicle it's going to come on or from what state or from where it's being ordered. So that's where they need to manage that a little better.
Councilmember Reed?
Yes, thank you. So I'm sure Klessons appreciates your advocacy here, Councilmember Burns. But one, I want to note that we're not banning commercial vehicles on this road, right? What this would ban is semi trucks. I can't imagine any of you that would want semi trucks in your neighborhood, in your residential neighborhood. So one, I guess I agree. I think we should look at the fines and the fines that have been issued to these trucks. I think that will be helpful information as this comes back. And again, I haven't personally reached out. We have staff. We have parking staff who are professionals who, they're the ones who should be making this kind of contact with something like that. And when they don't reach out to our professional staff who are hired to do this, and they don't respond to them, requesting a meeting with the council member, we've had an open door to allow them to communicate with us. They're not communicating. And so again, I urge that we move this forward, and I think we can continue on with our agenda this evening.
Mr. Stonebeck?
As included in the packet, there is information that the police department did have a meeting with Klenson's, and the meeting was on June 8th, and there was agreement to have follow-up meetings every 3 months. It was the police department short staffing that did not allow that next meeting to occur after that. However, the police department themselves, the police department has not received any complaints since they had their meeting on June 8th regarding truck traffic in this area. So that's the report that I have from the police department. So they are set up to have another meeting. They are looking at other alternatives. So I don't want to give the impression that Clinton's did not communicate with the city. They did accept the meeting. They had a meeting, and they are willing to have a follow-up meeting, and they are looking at other alternatives. I just want to say that. I'm not saying the problem's corrected. There was an inference that they refused to meet with the city, but there was a meeting with the city that was held. And the meeting notes are in the packet and are available. And again, a second meeting did not occur, but that was because the police department was short-staffed and they didn't have time to go out and have this meeting.
So just point of information, we have received complaints, and the police department has received complaints. In fact, here I have in front of me an email from after that date, November 11th, with a truck at 3:30 a.m., and the police department is CC'd there. So we've received complaints since then. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying. Councilmember Harris?
So I have a couple of issues. I'm appalled that there's a business that is not going to meet us at the table. We are the city. And if there's something wrong, then everybody needs to come to the table. So I'm appalled that we have someone that feels they're above doing that. So that's just number one, and maybe because I'm new, I don't understand that, but that's not acceptable. Second, I encourage all of the residents to use 311. That is how we really keep track of if there's an issue, and I know that that's annoying at 3 in the morning to get up and do that, but I encourage you to do that. Then we have all the data that we need. And I think there needs to be a discussion and penalties to that. I know they do not organize the trucks, but they should be paying attention to that. They should be indicating and letting us know what is going on. And if they refuse to, while we don't want to get rid of businesses and tell them they've outgrown it, there are expectations to being a business in our city. And we will hold them to those expectations. And if I need to make that call, I'll make that call.
Yeah, and I just want to say again, I think this is also comes down to a driver issue, because what I want to make very clear that the person I talked to, and it's not a friend, it was more of a friend of a friend, did not say they didn't want to meet. They met June 8th, as Deputy Manager Stonebeck said. I think what they expressed to me is that they've been dealing with this for years, as I know the neighbors has as well. There's been agreements made. They feel like on their end they've been complying. It could also be a driver issue, which is why I said I think as a first step, and that's not to say that I want trucks idling. It's just if trucks are idling, I expect law enforcement in this case, because they're the ones responsible, to respond and ticket immediately, right? And if we need to increase those fees to $1,000, then they should be increased to $1,000, and I would support that. So I think some of this could be a driver issue as well, because there are different drivers traveling around here. And what I'm saying is, if there's a way if we're going to require semi-trucks, companies to make sure that they go from semi-trucks to vans, we need to do that citywide. And I would support that, right? If we figure out how to do that. If we just want to do away with semi-trucks across the city in every area where residential, residents are impacted, then let's do that. But to me, that's requires a deeper look at how we want to do things around the city. In the meantime, what I would support, again, is I think this is a driver issue, which is what was communicated to me, that they have instructed drivers not to do things that they're continuing to do. And so to me, that indicates that if we were to fine the drivers, which is how that will work, and increase the fines potentially, that we would at least have more information on whether or not that's effective. And if it's not, then we'll know that. And if they don't want to meet with us, that is a deep concern of mine. But they met in June. I think they've had issues with previous administrations. I'll just say that. It's been a lot of tension, and I think it will go a long way to have, whether it's Councilman Reed or the city manager, to reach out along with the police department if they already have a rapport established, to try to get them back to the table. But I don't want to, it is not okay for a business in Evanston not to, communicate with the city, but I think they feel like they have, and they've tried everything that they can do. And so I think it's on us to assess steeper fines on the drivers and see if that helps. And continue to try to meet with them. If they don't, that says a lot. And maybe we take further action at that point.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Reed? And
Yes.
Harris.
Yeah, and let's begin to close this out. But, well, no, you're not going to have the final word on the 8th Ward issue. And so I want to be clear, again, here on this. This is a residentially zoned area. This is not, a truck route. This is not, a commercial area. And so we want to be clear on what we're talking about here. Yes, they met with the police department. They did not meet with our parking staff, with the staff that is really in charge of this. A lot of people are more willing to meet with the police department than other departments. And I also, so again, I'd like for staff to come back with two things. Councilmember Burns wants an analysis of the fines, right? We're currently fining the drivers. That's what staff has said already. We're not finding the business, we're finding the drivers, and that's not helping. I appreciate that you say that the business admits that they feel like they've done everything they can do, right? They're saying that we've met with the city for years. We think we've done everything we can do, and still there are semis just parked in front of this residential area. And so I think that really should drive home the point. And I'm hoping folks from Clueston are watching this and seeing that this committee is looking to take this serious one way or another. And so now I urge us to vote this forward.
And just a point of information, Director, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Councilmember Harris?
I'm calling for the question. I think we've debated this long
Thank
enough.
you. Second.
I mean, you could just do it. I just had a point of information question for
Well,
Councilmember.
the question has been called in second.
I'll do that to you too. That's good.
Councilmember Reed? Do I have,
Point of information does not constitute debate.
okay.
Thank you. So just a point of information on, does the parking services department have anything to do with enforcement around this issue? If somebody calls and complains, is it our law enforcement coming out or our parking services team? Especially if, I think the concerns that I heard are people blocking driveways, again, not appropriate, should be addressed. Idling, would the parking services team come out or with law enforcement? I just want to point of information.
It would be both or a combination of the both. So if a vehicle is idling, parking enforcement may be deployed to the scene, and they can ask the driver to shut off the vehicle, right, while they're waiting for the Klessens to open. If the driver decides that he or she doesn't want to turn off their vehicle, then our team member would then call for a police officer, and the officer would come and then ask the individuals to turn off the vehicle, or they would write the citation for the idling vehicle. Same thing if the vehicle is double parked in the middle of the street across a couple of driveways. Our team member could come out and ask the driver to move along, and if the driver didn't want to do that, then we could issue a citation for blocking the driveways.
And I just want to be clear, does the parking services team have the authority to write those type of citations?
Yes.
Is what I'm saying. Okay.
Yes, we can write those, yes.
So why would they call the police department?
We would call the police department if the driver doesn't want to move the vehicle. If we ask them,
Okay.
if they're double parked and they're in the vehicle, and we ask them to move along, we can call the police departments, and the officers can be deployed, and they can,
But that's good to know. Both the parking services team and law enforcement can write those citations.
yeah, it's been a combination of the two. And
Okay.
oftentimes, the police is called initially. It's just that, depending on their staffing that night when they're called and the type of emergencies that they're responding to, we'll either initiate a quick response or a delayed response.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so the question's been called, so we start with, and it's to move this on to council with the expectation to hold it there. Councilmember Harris? Aye. Councilmember Nusma?
No.
Councilmember Burns?
No.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
And aye. So 3-2, this moves to council. Okay, next, item number A6.
Madam Chair, I move item A6, ordinance 123-022, amending Title 10, Chapter 6, towing and impoundment of vehicles to allow for the disposal of abandoned or unclaimed vehicles.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay.
This is the one I was unclear on. Yeah. City Manager Stowe, I think did he, or do you want to talk to a deputy manager?
I can try to answer your question. I can try to answer your question.
Just the 7, what was it, how was it phrased again? The 7?
7 years, vehicles 7 years or newer.
Are these newer cars that we're talking about that are ending up being, I can't remember exactly how they phrased it, but.
It is the newer vehicles that are generally totaled, and yet we have to sit on them for a long time, and we're paying a daily rent to have them in the yard. So instead of waiting after 10 days, we would like to be able to sell the totaled vehicle, even though it is newer than 7 years.
So the vehicle is totaled and then it's taken to the yard, or?
That is correct.
Okay,
And then it
that's what
has
I
to be
didn't
held
understand.
there, and we
Okay,
pay
all
a
right.
daily storage fee.
Okay, it's abandoned because it's totaled.
Correct.
All right, that's what I didn't get. Okay, perfect.
Councilmember Reed?
So, when you say after 10 days, does that mean, somebody gets into a car accident, their 2020 Tesla gets totaled, but maybe they still want it, whatever, they wanted, the insurance company wants it. Are we saying that after 10 days, we're just without checking in? And how does that compare to?
There is a notice required that you do have to make them aware of it.
And how does this compare to a vehicle that's 8 years or older?
Those can be disposed of right after 10 days as well.
Okay.
So the newer vehicles you're supposed to hang on to for a longer duration of time. But because most of them are totaled and people aren't coming to get them, we still wind up having to pay the daily storage fee. And so if they're not totaled, there hasn't been that much of an issue. It's when the vehicle is totaled, nobody's really claiming it, then we give notice to the register that we have information on that we are going to sell your vehicle.
How many of these vehicles do we encounter a year, roughly?
I don't have that number off the top of my head.
Do you know, rough, like, is it tens, hundreds?
I don't know
Okay,
that information.
So I guess as this is an ordinance, so it'll go to council and be read twice. I'd love to know what the expected cost savings is from this, what's anticipated, how many vehicles we anticipate, or we interact with a year under this for both categories, the 7 years and newer, and then all of the older vehicles. I think that's what I'm interested in. Okay, thank you.
Call vote. Councilmember, I'm sorry, go ahead. Councilmember Harris?
Can that cost be deferred to whoever the car belongs to? Usually when you tow a car, it goes to whoever owns that car. So I'm just wondering.
You can, but then people generally aren't going to want to have to pay that, and so then you go after collections and everything else to try to get the money.
Okay, no further discussion? Okay, Councilmember Harris? Councilmember Newsma?
Aye.
Councilmember Burns?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
And aye. Okay, so 5-0, that goes on to council. And is that the last item? That's it. Okay, so APW is adjourned. All in favor? Aye. No, I don't know, okay. No further, okay. I guess city council at 6? Does that sound about right? Yeah. Okay, we'll start city council at 6. Thank you.